Hi, it's me, and welcome to my channel. Did you know that over 250 million years ago, before the dinosaurs roamed the planet, a weird beast, kind of like a wombat, ruled the Earth? Well, sort of. So you see, we don't really know exactly what this animal was, and there are lots of ideas about this creature that looks a little like a pig, a cow, or maybe even a wombat itself. But there's a lot we do know because this animal is from the Permian Period, which started around 300 million years ago and lasted for about 50 million years until it ended with a mass extinction so big that it wiped out 90 to 95% of all marine species and up to 70% of all land species. That's why this animal has been called a real-life Jurassic Park monster. But what does it have to do with wombats? Keep watching to find out. Hey, do you love dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures? Well, then you'll love this channel. We make videos about awesome fossils and the amazing creatures that lived before the dinosaurs. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, let's get into the video. Number 1. What was the Permian Period? So this story begins in the Permian Period, which started about 300 million years ago. Back then, Earth looked very different from how it does today. All of the world's land was bunched together in one supercontinent called Pangaea, which means all Earth in Greek. Pangaea sat between two vast oceans called Panthalassa, which means all sea. This sea and the supercontinent were surrounded by huge mountain ranges called the Euromerian and the Pan-African Mountains. It was also incredibly hot and dry, kind of like today's Sahara Desert or parts of Australia. In fact, some scientists believe that much of Pangaea was covered in red desert sands. In this strange landscape roamed some very strange reptiles and amphibians. There were also the first true mammals, tiny shrew-like creatures, and the first dinosaurs appeared in the very late Permian. Then, suddenly, 252 million years ago, the Permian came to an abrupt end. A series of cataclysmic events led to the largest mass extinction in Earth's history. More than 90% of all marine species and up to 70% of land species vanished. In fact, only 13% of all species survived. That is like wiping out every single person on Earth today, except for less than 1 in 10. Scientists call this event the Great Dying. The Great Dying is sometimes referred to as the Permian-Triassic extinction event because it happened at the end of the Permian geological time period and ushered in the Triassic. And this is where the wombat-like creatures come in. Number 2. Wait. Wombats. Now, when most people hear the word wombat, they probably imagine one of these cute little marsupials native to Australia that look something like this. However, these modern wombats descended from much smaller ancestors. And, to be honest, no one knows exactly what those earliest ancestors looked like. So, scientists used the term wombats to describe a group of strange animals from the Permian that may have been ancestors to modern wombats. These ancient wombats were small, sturdy, plant-eating animals that probably spent a lot of time burrowing. They were probably more like naked mole rats than cute wombats. But again, we don't really know what they looked like because their skeletons are pretty scrappy. Most of the time, scientists only have fragments of skulls, jaws, and teeth to go on. However, one group of potential ancient wombats called dicynodonts is better known because they are therapsids. Therapsids were a diverse group of mostly mammal-like reptiles that thrived during the Permian. Dicynodonts were small proto-mammals who gave rise to modern mammals after the Great Dying. That means that they are our ancestors and therefore related to us humans too. Their name means two-peaked cone tooth, because many had two large pointed teeth on their lower jaw, although some had none at all. Other than their teeth, dicynodonts looked a lot like reptiles, but they shared some key features with mammals, such as a more upright posture, larger brains, and more complex social behaviors. Some dicynodonts were relatively small, around the size of a house cat, while others grew to the size of pigs or even cows. And, to be clear, these creatures aren't actual wombats, but they are considered to be among the first mammals, so calling them ancient wombat-like beasts is somewhat accurate. 3. What caused the Permian extinction? So again, it wasn't the ancient wombats that were responsible for the mass extinction. Instead, scientists think a series of major volcanic eruptions was to blame. These eruptions, called the Siberian traps, unleashed massive amounts of carbon dioxide and other toxic gases into the atmosphere. Here's what may have happened next. First, the CO2 caused a runaway greenhouse effect. Sunlight bounced off Earth's surface and was trapped by water vapor and CO2, causing Earth's average temperature to rise. Next, the oceans absorbed much of the excess heat and became much warmer. As a result, ocean currents stopped circulating. Cold, oxygen-filled water, which had once replenished near the poles, could no longer reach the tropics. At the same time, stagnant, warm water in the tropics could no longer sink and flow toward the poles. This disruption in ocean currents disrupted food webs around the world. Warm water piled up in the shallow seas across the globe, killing off corals and other organisms that needed cooler, oxygen-rich water. Also, as the oceans warmed, the amount of dissolved oxygen they could hold decreased. Combined with the fact that photosynthesis by algae and plants on land declined due to the loss of CO2 from the atmosphere, the oceans became increasingly stratified with an oxygen minimum zone forming in the middle. This created anoxic or oxygen-free zones in the oceans where few organisms could live. On land, it rained. Lots of rain, which sounds nice, but this rain was extremely acidic. That is because the sulfur dioxide and other gases released by the volcanoes reacted with water in the atmosphere to form sulfuric acid. Acid rain damaged plants, soils, and freshwater habitats. Plants on land would have experienced drought stress from the higher temperatures while also having to deal with the acid rain. On top of all of this, melting ice released huge amounts of methane, a greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. Scientists think this, along with the release of nitrogen from rain and decomposing animals and plants, created the perfect conditions for microbes to bloom in the oceans. Bacteria took over and produced hydrogen sulfide, or H2S gas, which is poisonous to most life forms. H2S probably killed off most phytoplankton in the oceans, which led to the collapse of the food webs in the ocean and on land. Bam! Just like that, 90% of all marine species and up to 70% of land species went extinct. Only 13% of all species survived. Number 4. So, were ancient wombats to blame? Definitely not. But the story of the Permian extinction and the mysterious creatures that lived before the dinosaurs gives kids a lot to think about. Like, what was Earth like before the dinosaurs? How did strange beasts like ancient wombats survive through one of Earth's biggest disasters? And how do we know so much about the Permian despite it happening so long ago? If you want to learn more about these questions, check out the additional resources. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to join us on our quest to bring the prehistoric past to life. And thank you for coming along on this journey through time. I'll see you later. Bye.